by member Bill Day. A compilation of reports for the past 10 years is enclosed, and Principal Andrea Spaz will present very briefly to provide some context, as she is a school psychologist by training.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, Ms. Boss.
Hi, good to be here. Can you hear me okay? All right, so I've been asked to speak a little bit about bullying this evening. As Ms. Picard said, I have background as a school psychologist, and I can speak to a little bit about adolescence and brain development and have some information I can share. There's been some questions about our numbers at the middle school in terms of bullying, so I can speak to that as well. So in terms of an overview, we do have some slides up here that you can reference. Bullying does most often occur as a repeated behavior. So this is not a one-time single incident between the bully or the cyberbully and the offender. This is a pervasive, serious, and persistent matter to be classified as bullying. It's not just a one-time event. So that's important to know, that definition of bullying. There's also a Rhode Island state definition of bullying, and I want to review that with you this evening. And this is the use by one or more students of a written, verbal, or electronic expression or a physical act or gesture or any combination thereof directed at a student that does any of the following. It could cause physical or emotional harm to the student or damage to the student's property. It places the student in reasonable fear or harm to himself or herself or damage to his or her property. It creates an intimidating, threatening, hostile, or abusive environment for the student educationally. It infringes on the rights of the student to participate in school-related activities. And it's also considered materially and substantially disruptive to the educational process and the orderly operation of a school building. So it could be any of those acts or a combination thereof. So let's talk a little bit about why we see bullying tend to peak during middle school, okay? So we have developmental stages that students are going through during this time. We know, research tells us that our brains continue to mature and develop all throughout adolescence and even early adulthood. Some studies tell us, our brains are not fully developed until we're 25 years old. So just think about a middle school student, adolescent, and what their brain development is going through. That's a critical stage for them. They're starting to learn these skills, but they're also learning by trial and error, okay? We're also teaching them important skills to employ during this time. And they're often relying on adults to help them with these skills. And we help compensate and help support them in that area. So there's some major developmental things happening in the brain for students during this time. Our prefrontal cortex is developing. Prefrontal cortex, I'm going to get a little sciencey on you, but that's really important in terms of the decisions students make. That's when our prefrontal cortex is developing during adolescence and early adulthood. And this really comes into play with decision making. It comes into play with being able to control our responses. Is something called response inhibition. That's our ability to think before we speak and think before we act. These are critical things when it comes to bullying, right? To be able to weigh decisions before us. And just think about how this is still developing in our middle schoolers. Middle school, it's a time of big transition, right? Our students are used to our smaller elementary schools. I know some of our elementary schools are larger than others, but then they're coming to the big high school where all of our elementary schools converge. There's a lot of social needs that come with that. That's a big shift for our students to endure that transition. Similarly, they're forming new friend groups because now they're interacting with students from other schools. They're also establishing who they are as an individual. Their personal identity is forming. They're figuring out who they are, what their interests are, where they fit in socially. And because of that, they're also more easily influenced by peers. And think about this. In middle school, they may not have some of the same exposures as a high school student to learning how to cope with these peer influences. They're also starting to become a little bit more independent. Any of you who have a middle schooler might see that through some pushback and other things, but they are becoming more independent, and along with that comes many positive things as well. But this can also impact why we see some increases in bullying. And then also mood and behavior changes occur during this time, during middle years. There's a lot going on social, emotionally, mood, behavior. These all come into play when it comes to bullying. So it's also important that we know that our middle schoolers have less experiencing employing some of these skills. I do want you to be aware that we have a bullying forum on our Charahoe District website. It's on our main page. It's linked here in the slides. Our schools do provide and inform parents and students about this bullying reporting form. So whenever there's an alleged bullying incident, they're made aware that this form exists and that they have the choice to complete it or not. There's many times students do not or parents do not choose to submit a form because they rely on the interventions that we have in place. Maybe the results of the investigation don't warrant further reporting, and they don't feel like it determines the category of the alleged incident to further report. Also know that sometimes you don't see a bullying form completed because we try to employ preventive strategies and resolution strategies. So I can speak to the high school. We have something called conflict resolution and mediation. I'm sure you've heard the term mediation before, and mediation can be done peer-to-peer, peer-to-teacher. It's when a trained person, I've done a lot of mediation with students, sits in front of two bodies and tries to come to a common solution so that an incident doesn't maybe turn into a bullying incident. Maybe there's some conflicts occurring, and so we want to get ahead of it. We want to get those two parties in a room to try to solve it as smoothly as possible so that they can prevent any type of something that could escalate into a bullying situation. Again, conflict resolution is something we teach. We might act out some role-playing scenarios, like if you were ever faced with this situation, how could you handle it so as it to not turn into a bullying type of situation. And then again, strategies to diffuse situations, strategies to, do simple things like walk away from a situation or go tell a trusted adult. These are all important preventative measures that may result in a bullying form not being completed because there's other interventions in place. So that's just a really quick summary of, why we might see some increase in bullying in the middle school years.
Does anyone have any questions? Anybody from the? No. Yes, Ms.
Yeah.
Chambers.
Andrea, that was great. Does mediation usually work with the kids, or do they continue to hold grudges or continue?
Yeah, it really depends on the situation.
Yeah.
Each individual situation is unique. It's a great preventative strategy to get ahead of it before it becomes worse. And oftentimes what I find is that giving students the opportunity to talk it out with one another really helps resolve so many issues. And again, this is not only student to student, but it could be student and an adult as well. But it's a really effective strategy, mediation in general, in diffusing conflict.
Great,
it gives
yeah.
people the opportunity to be heard. And sometimes that's all they really want is just for the other party to feel like they're valued and listened to. They might not agree, right? But they at least have been heard. And that's a big part of it.
And in terms of the mediation,
sorry.
in terms of the mediation, how long has that approach been implemented? And is there a body of data that has it been implemented long enough to track some data around it?
That's a really good question. I wouldn't say I have specific data that in terms of us tracking, like this case has, this mediation case was successful. And it's just something I know historically we've been doing as a practice, at least when I started as assistant principal 6 years ago. This is my first year as principal in the building, but 6 years ago when I was assistant, it's a practice that myself and the principal at the time employed. Our deans employ it. In terms of hard numbers, I don't have those right before you. Yeah.
Mr. Luzon?
Yeah, how much would you say it's increased due to technology?
Oh, in terms of bullying, yeah, there's social media plays a big part. That's for sure. I'd have to look at national data to be able to really speak to that, but
Have we seen it here?
We do. Yeah. We see the impact of social media. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mr. I'm sorry. Mr. Day and then Mr. Callahan. Thank you. Excuse me, Goldie, you, just 1 second, you can have it, I'll let you know. Good, Mr. Day.
I was expecting to hear a report on how the middle school was successful and not successful in turning around what the report that I asked for, which had a high number of bullying situations. No, this didn't tell me anything.
No, Mrs. Enian's here.
Well, like I say, this was nice and flowery and fluffy and everything else, but I was specifically concerned about the high numbers at the time of the report that I got. This report we sent to the state. Is this the only thing we sent to the state? We don't follow it up with a letter or something to say that we've had success in turning around certain percentage of students? This to me is not anything that I can go back to the community and say that we've done to minimize bullying. It tells me, when you look at some of the significant issues in schools throughout the United States, 99% of it goes right back to bullying, from school shootings to suicides and stuff like that. And I was expecting to hear what we were doing and not telling me what I already knew. Maybe the people in this table didn't know the facts, but I did. So I have one other concern.
So if I could just, Mr. You requested that we be able to talk about the bullying report. I just said Ms. Foz is going to provide some context over, so we were all calibrated on what we have for bullying, overall, the big picture. So I also have Director Tatro and Principal Zenian here. Mr. Zenian, if you would like to speak directly about the middle school, but to your point, the state does not require us to talk about what the success rate is or isn't. It asks us to say how many incidents are reported, how many actual bullies are found from those incidents. And yes, there are successes to share that, and maybe I was unclear about the ask, but first we just wanted to give context. But we're here to talk about whatever you need to talk about as it relates to bullying. It's always going to be a topic of concern, which is why there's state regulation around it. Middle school ages are difficult, but we do think that there are several strategies, and I'm happy to have Mrs. Enian come up to talk about specifically the middle school. We only asked Ms. Boss to present at first because she is the trained school psychologist, just to provide some context.
Well, if I may, I think that it would behoove us if we're successful, because the state is only going to use these things against you. They're going to come out with a report somewhere along the line that compared to I don't know, Forster Gloucester, we're at the bottom of the list as far as a number of bullying, or the top of the list, I should say. And I think that it would behoove us, even though it's not required, to follow up with some justifications of what we, not justifications, but incidents of where we've done and made improvements over previous years. I mean, this 10-year thing here is great, but when you have to report them yearly, the state is not going to go back 10 years. They're going to concentrate on the first or second year. I have no confidence in the state of Rhode Island being friendly to any school district, especially Charahoe. We get splashed all over the newspapers when something is to the dislike of somebody. So if Mrs. Enian can explain why there's a spike here with the somehow I misplaced a paper that I had gotten that had this very high when I asked for it 2 meetings ago. So and maybe there's a reason that we're having this problem. Maybe he's going to turn around and tell me those are the 5 reasons that it spikes at the middle school.
Yeah, and
But-
their data is it's calibrated based on what you've seen. That's why we gave you, we went all the way back to 11, 12, so you could take a look at the trend. But if Mrs. Denny, if you want to come up and just share, and I agree with you, Mr. Day, there are definitely successes.
You want to see this?
And oftentimes we find, out of the 8 reports, there were 3
Yes,
bully incidents, actually, like, that were actually
They're 8.
allegations that were bullying. Mr. Zennian?
Hello, I'm Greg Zanian, principal at Charles Middle School. So one thing that the middle school does that I'm not sure if the rest of the district does, or I'm pretty sure the rest of the state does not do, is every time a parent or student mentions bullying to us, we give them the definition of what bullying is, and then we give them the form. So we don't sugarcoat it, we don't hide from it. About 8 years ago, when the new form came out and the reporting came out, John Anderson, our attorney, who is still our attorney, made the recommendation that if someone mentions bullying, you should give them the form. And that's been instilled in the staff in the middle school. I have it on my desktop, and anytime I get an email from a parent and the word bullying's in it, I respond by saying, this is the definition of bullying, and here's the form. If you feel your child's being bullied, please fill it out. So that's why we probably have a higher number. And then when we do get bullying reports, we ask if it involves more than one student, that they put one on each form, because that can become part of a confidential legal process. So I don't like more than one student's name on a legal form. So that's another reason where my numbers may be higher. I also have 1,000 students. Most middle schools have around 600. I believe we're the 4th largest middle school in the state. So I would expect our numbers to be a little bit higher based on just the size. And then I will say that COVID has not made things easier or better. And if you watch the nightly news, I'm pretty sure you cannot watch the news without seeing a brawl at a school committee meeting, in Congress, or on our airplane. And I think our children are modeling our adults. So we have some work to do on our behaviors. We are not alone, but we don't hide from it at Charahoe Middle School. We never have.
I appreciate that, and this is what I wanted to hear, that things that, I did not hear previously tonight, that you
I will also say,
a form. You ask of everyone who mentions that word to fill out a form. This is not something that was relayed earlier in this evening. So, I can understand that, and I can buy it. I really appreciate the job you're doing over there. I wish I had the confidence in some of the other administrators here that I have in you as a principal. I'll say that right here publicly, because I think you're doing a hell of a job over there, and I applaud you. But all I wanted to know is what the reason was.
So
you explained the reason in very good terms.
So I will also say that some of the mediation practices that Mrs. Spa spoke about, we have taken from the high school. Our guidance counselors will try to mediate with students. We do get parent permission to mediate, because we'll put 2 kids that may not necessarily like each other in the same room. So we do request parent permission. We don't always get it. When we do get it, we do try to mediate. And I will also say that if the budget is approved, the return of a 0.5 dean will be helpful in the middle school. We are now operating with 1 dean. So when the building was moved to the model of 1 principal, 1 assistant principal, it was with the model of 2 deans. We currently have 1 principal, 1 assistant principal, and 1 dean. If you look at most middle schools in the state that are smaller than us, they have more support than that. If you look at middle schools that are our size or larger, they tend to have more than what we have. So I think the 0.5 dean, if it goes into place, will be helpful, because there are some preventative actions that are harder to take when you have less staff.
Could I ask one more question?
Yes, and then Mr. Callahan.
I notice here that the high school career and check has numbers here. I've heard this many a times, and I certainly don't agree with it, but this doesn't tell me whether these incidents of bullying happened at the career and tech building or they happened in the high school. And they're 2 separate buildings. They have 2 separate administrators. I hope that Mr. Orth doesn't have to confer with the principal of the high school to deal with bullying. I don't understand why I don't know whether they happened in the high school or whether they happened in a career and tech building, because there are two different work-related situations here. One is where kids are working hands-on and stuff like this in automotive and some of the other trades over there. And it might be just something over here was said in jest that was misconstrued as bullying in the career and tech atmosphere. So
Charahoe High School and Charahoe Tech, there's actually considered one school. It's one school code. And actually, Andrea is the principal of the entire school. Director Orth is the director of the CTC programming pathway. But Ms. Spaz is the principal to all students, whether it's CTC or because we have over 700 students in CTC. So she oversees as the principal, where Charahoe Tech is not considered a separate school because it's the same school code as Charahoe High School. Where Mr. Orth's responsibility, he actually reports directly to me, and his responsibility is to the pathway programs. While yes, majority of our programs live in the CTC building, there are also CTC, like our business, our early childhood are over in the main high school. So yes, while there's a separation of the two buildings, it's one high school. So Director Orth is not paid as a principal, nor is he coded that way, but he is a direct support to Ms. Spaz, who oversees all operations of the high school.
Ms. Boz, could you answer Mr. Day's question about does Mr. Oth have to confer with you if he has a student issue? Does he?
Well, our deans do investigate the bullying cases that take place at Charahoe Tech, and we'd be able to go back and look to see where the incident took place. And we, like Ms. Picard said, we consider ourselves one building. Director Oth and I work interchangeably throughout every day.
So you work as a team?
As a team, 100%.
Thank you. Mr. Day? Good?
I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Callahan and then Mr. Legori. Thank you for waiting, Mr. Callahan.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you both for being here tonight. Can you clarify incidents versus bullying on the count spreadsheet?
Yeah, Gabe.
So the instance is when it's reported.
Okay.
So when it's reported, it's considered an incident, and then when you look into it and investigate it, you then have to document whether or not that incident is technically bullying, or does it fall under harassment or something else.
Okay, so, okay, thank you for clarifying that. Follow up on this, the data is really interesting. I appreciate you providing it to us like this. When I look at the amount of bullying that's taking place in first semester 21-22, it's not a surprising number. It's very consistent with previous years. In fact, it's much lower than a number of years in our past. But the incidence rate, specifically at the middle school, is much, much higher. And I guess this gets to your comments earlier about kids coming back and dealing with, coming out of a pandemic and so on. I guess the striking data point in this is second semester 2021, 0 for incidents and for bullying, but obviously that's due to DL. So
Second semester, you're talking this last year,
yeah, second semester 2021.
Yeah. So you were looking at approximately 1,000 students, which approximately we started the year with 770 in person, which was pretty impressive when most middle schools didn't open with anyone in person.
Right.
But you still have to remember we had about 230 that were not in person. And then we took a very unique approach to it. Our superintendent gave us the leeway or the liberty to let kids in at a natural break. And I chose as the principal of the building not to do that. And I let kids back in within 48 hours of the request if we could make it happen. So we had an influx of kids coming in throughout the year. And then when we had spikes, which we did have in that time period of COVID, you had parents requesting to DL.
Okay.
So they would DL, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, they would request to be in person again. And me and all my wisdom, decided that, I was gonna allow that because I really wanted kids in the building.
Yeah.
So, but it definitely caused a, up and down and some seesaw effect of, behaviors in the building because you had kids coming and going.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I'd also like to just add that those middle school years are so critical too for students to be here at school in person, learning those social skills, learning from trial and error, learning from interacting with one another and their peers. And those students who were distance learning for an extended period of time, you're likely going to see some repercussions from that. You're likely going to see, a difficulty acclimating back into the building. That can likely happen because they haven't had those exposures, those opportunities to learn through their peers, through corrective feedback from adults.
Thank you. I guess sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's fine. So when I'm looking at this 1920 second semester, it's, your total incidents and bullies is 1 and 1. First semester 2021, it's 3 and 2, and then it's 0, 0, and then it's now back to, I would say, kind of historic numbers. Is there anything in that performance time frame? Those are outstanding numbers to have. Is there anything that can be learned from that we can then translate going forward to help us avoid, incidents occurring and then them being egregious enough to be classified as bullying? That's a tough question, I know, but I'm just saying that there's a lot to unpack in those numbers.
So I think it helps if you're, aggressive when you're dealing with it. I think, if you can get in front of it, it helps. I also think, when you, with social media, you can see problems coming. So if you can try to head them off, the problem with social media is, we can't keep up with it. And with, some of the social media they're currently using, in 20 minutes, it's gone. So it's very hard to track down or to figure out exactly what happened or who said what, or, the rumor mill starts or the claims are made, and to verify what is truly happening can become an issue. And I think we've seen a little more, of their issues around social media this year with, kids became very, tech savvy during COVID too, because they were, many of our students were not allowed out of their houses, or they had to be with their immediate families. So they figured out ways to communicate with, their peers through technology, and that, communication has continued even when we're back in person.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glory, go ahead. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you
You're
both. I guess my take on this, and I think an important thing here that maybe to some degree addresses what Mr. Day says, but we don't know the numbers from any other school in the state. So before I would even raise a concern, I'd like to see where we stand within the state. But I suspect it's good. And, I think, Mrs. Spaz, your background on developmental stages, I do think that's important because, we had kids out for basically 2 years that were 4th, 5th, 6th graders and re-entered the middle school, which is developmentally the most awkward time in anyone's life. And I think to see 8 incidences, only 3 of which were founded, is actually remarkably good as opposed to remarkably bad. And again, I'd like to see other data. And as mentioned, Mrs. Enya, we are a very large school. But I can't think of a more dangerous environment to re-engage in than having been out for 2 years. Like I said, these 4th graders who are today's 6th graders, they got kicked out. So I think it's remarkable. I think at the high school, regardless if it's in the tech school or not, by my calculation, in the last 3 academic years, there's been, I think, 3 founded incidences of bullying. Now, I would have just guessed there would be a lot more. So I'm very, very pleased to see that, and whatever efforts you guys are making, I hope you continue to do those.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask. Thank you. Goldie, do you still want to you have a chance now to speak? Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Goldie Williams, Richmond. I got told by a parent that there's a pervasive amount of bullying in the middle school. And when my youngest son was in the middle school, he had to help his friends defeat the bully, like not, I mean, help with the bullying. And then he would get bullied. And then my son, who graduated from the RISE program in 2017, he was bullied on a daily basis from 2016 to 2017. Nobody did anything. And also Mrs. Garlick from the RISE program bullied him, and nobody did anything about it.
Did you ever report it to anyone, Goldie?
I didn't find out until 2 years after
Well-
he graduated.
Well, that's sort of hard for us to, for the, for the teachers or the
But I know
administration.
Mrs. Garlick's dead.
Yeah. Yes, Ms. Chambers?
Yeah, I would just like to suggest, based on the good information that you just heard, that if these parents are out there and telling you and sharing with you the pervasiveness of bullying, let them know that there is an avenue where they can report it to the principal, and they will do something about it. There's a form to fill out.
Also, kids have been telling me too, students, I mean.
Anybody apparently can communicate
Yes,
to the
correct.
administration,
Correct.
and they can fill out a form, and that will be the right place to do it. And you know that now, so you can share that information
Mhm.
with them.
But I want to know how many kids are bullied that are special needs.
I'm not sure they can take that. She wants to know how many kids are bullied. Especially. We wouldn't, Goldie, that information wouldn't be available in this kind of data,
Okay.
this kind of form, but sorry to.
But a lot of kids who are special needs get bullied.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am. Would you like to speak?
Yes, please.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Elaine Ritchie. I am a resident of Charlestown. I've lived here all my life. I have a daughter who's a sixth grader in the middle school, and I have a daughter who's a junior in the high school. And I just want to say thank you. And whatever my comments are, I hope are not found to be defensive. But I just want to start off by saying that when a student comes to either the middle school or the high school with something that they feel is deemed as bullying, I would hope everyone would know that that would not have been the first time this child had felt this way. And just as in here, it says causes physical or emotional harm. So I'm not sure who is indicating whether a student is founded to be bullied or not bullied. And I'm going to speak on two issues. One, I believe my daughter was a sixth grader that was found to be as one of those incidents. And I don't know, maybe it was not because this was just like 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure where the forum is to speak on this. I had met with Gina Picard and the principal of the middle school, and I was very disappointed from that meeting, not to which I'm speaking to either of them, but just on the system and protocols, which I kept hearing we are bound by the state protocols and rules. I was looking at the state protocols and what can be done, and honestly, I felt they were very vague, and I felt they could have been interpreted to have some discipline or an action by the school, which was not done. Which I understand that as a parent, it's not my child, that it's not my right to know what's happening to that child, but I do know when the child is back in the classroom. My child was threatened that a child was going to get her after school and beat her up and bring a weapon to school and stab her with it. And that child was put back in the classroom 2 days later. It was found unfounded, and which I'm extremely grateful. This child did not mean to bring a knife to school and stab my child, but where's the discipline? Where's the discipline allowing the student to come back in school? I mean, I know it's been a while since I graduated high school, but I just, when you threaten someone essentially with their life to be, basically a slap on the wrist, and I kept hearing that, well, the state doesn't allow us to keep a child out of school. So one, I was very disappointed in that, and I had to keep my own child home because I wanted to separate them in school, because the only alternative was for my child to have a bodyguard in school, or for my child to disrupt her classes and to change classes. And I appreciate the safety protocols that were put into effect to have that happen, but I didn't feel like my daughter needed to make those changes. So at that time, I was never offered a bullying report. And I'm sure this was way beyond bullying, but I was never offered a bullying report, and I was never offered to speak to the resource officer. So I did inform Gina Picard and the middle school principal that I would be going. My only option was to then go to the Richmond Police Department, and they said they could not inform me not to do that. But not once did they say I could speak with a resource officer. I went to the Richmond Police Department right after that, and the very first question they asked me was, did they have you speak to the resource officer? And I said, no, I was not given that as an option. So I filed a police report. So I did do that. So I understand that maybe all of your hands are tied and we are not able to discipline students for making harsh accusations or threats against other students, but I think that is a problem. And I think that is enabling bad behavior to continue. I also want to mention that my child, a couple days before, this happened on a Monday, the Friday before, went to Mr. Zenyon with a couple of students because this kid has been disrupting their classroom activities over and over again, and was told there was nothing they could do. Now, at one time where they offered a bullying report, which on here, it clearly states here, disrupting the education process and from happening. So I just want to make that note. Also, I know of other students that also, when they go to report a bullying instance, they're told that's not bullying, which I don't know how anyone can deem that they were not emotionally harmed and were not in a reasonable fear of being harmed to themselves. So I'm not sure who's making those judgment calls for these students. And now I want to talk about, unfortunately, my child who's now in the high school, my other child, just a couple days ago, was being harassed by students as in a sexual nature for a sexual orientation. And basically, my daughter and her girlfriend were basically dismissed. No bullying report was filed, nor was I called as a parent to talk about this. They were told that they were going to talk to the students. So I feel the bullying reports and the incidents might be higher than they're actually being reported because students are being told this is not bullying. But do you want to fill out a report? First of all, it takes a lot for a student to go to someone to ask for help and to reach out. And they are being told this is not bullying. So as a parent, that was really hard to hear. And it's really, I just feel it's unacceptable. And I understand COVID is an issue. I feel like COVID is used as an excuse. And I feel like mediation is an excuse of like a very low thing to solve a problem. I feel like we need better action plans to actually help these students, whether it be middle schoolers, high schoolers, because middle schoolers become bad high schoolers. Bullying does not stop bullying, especially when you're not really doing anything to prevent this from happening again, but besides having conversations. And if kids are not reporting, then how do you ever have a first incident? How do you have multiple incidents to show there's a problem? So I feel it is a problem. And I'm trying to think of, there's so much I wanted to say, but I might be forgetting things, but I want to say thank you for listening to me. I hope that we can make changes, not only for my children, but everyone's children, and it's our community, and our kids grow up to be citizens. And I feel like parents have to be responsible. And I, as a parent, you know, like I said with my high schooler, I was never called, I was never informed. And this just happened 2 days ago. And I looked and it said a parent should be notified in 24 hours, but they basically they did not fill out a report. And I know it sounds good to say, oh, you know, to a child, you can fill out a report, but what high schooler, if they're feeling diminished and they're feeling like you shouldn't be here, it took a lot for them to go there. They're not going to fill out a report. So I feel like these numbers might be a little low, and I feel like we need to have action instead of just making excuses on why we are in this situation. Because even if our numbers are the lowest in the state, they should be lower. We should not tolerate it. This is not kids being ignored. This is not kids not being liked. These kids are being bullied. They're made to feel like they're not safe. It's just wrong. It's on where they come from, their race, their sexual orientation, their gender, their religion, whatever it is, it's happening in our schools, and the school knows about it. And the kids are being brushed off. This is not bullying. I was thinking to myself, do I not know what bullying means? I was looking it up before I came here, and I had written something, but you know what? It was presented here. It was presented here. I was thinking that maybe because my child didn't get stabbed, maybe because my child wasn't beaten up, that this wasn't bullying. So thank you for your time. Thank you for everything that you do.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Betsy Alvarez, and I'm speaking today as a parent. I am also a teacher here, but I'm a parent first. I'm from Hopkinton, Rhode Island. Elaine's actually my sister, so this is actually really concerning. And I want to start off by saying this is a pre-COVID problem. My son is a 7th grader at Cherry Middle School, and in 5th grade, we filled out bullying reports. They were dismissed. And then we went DL. We had issues this year. I had my husband deal with it because I didn't feel like I was really being seen as an educator. My son does not take the bus. It's not just in the school. I'm fortunate enough to be able to drive him to school. We started off with the bus, even though last year he had a hate crime on the bus, which Zenyan did deal with. But my husband is Mexican and my son is Mexican American, is very proud about that. He no longer wears his Mexican garb to school. He's singled out. He does not take the bus anymore because of things that were said. I said to my son, we need to fill out a bullying report. I'm an educator. I know what has to be done. He said, Mom, they're not going to do anything about it. They never do anything about it. My husband said, don't worry about it. We have an option. You go to school. He walks to your classroom. You bring him home at the end of the day. He gets here some days at 6:30 with me, not to take the bus because of the problems that transitioned from bus to school. Continual problems in the classroom. My husband brought him in. Mr. Zenyan kicked my husband out of the middle school. My husband then walked over to Picard's office. Mrs. Picard did talk with my husband and son, but point blank said to my son, what you're describing is not bullying. That evening, I come home, I say to my son, we still need to fill out the forms. I don't want to fill out the forms, Mom, because they're not going to do anything. It's a waste of my time. So these incident reports that we're talking about are very low because kids don't want to report. Year 3 in the middle school, from an educator family knowing what we have to do. My son broke down a month later. Mom, they're still bothering me. They're still bothering me. Fill out the report. No, I can't do it. We allowed him not to do it against my better judgment. The problem is huge. And it is concerning to me because now it's my son, my nieces having problems. We grew up here, my family. We chose to move here. My whole family chose to move here. We have great education. We have great educators. But unfortunately, this bullying is a problem. When, just going back, I just made a note, when the bullying report of my son from 5th grade, we were never told that it was just harassment. We were just said it was not bullying. Something has to be done with this problem. And this is just one family, 3 incidents or multiple instances. Race, threat, and sexual orientation is a huge problem in our community. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any comments? Ms. Giusti?
I think it's important, and certainly, I'm sure all of we won't address those all for the privacy of the families too in public, but certainly will be followed up on. I think it's important though for the community to understand what remedies are available to you, because my husband is an educator, and if there are children, and now he's with little kids, so it's not as big of an issue. But when he had older kids, he would often say to me, "There's not much I can do. There's not much I can do. I know this is a problem. We're doing everything in our power to work with this child, to keep this child contained and to help this child work through their own issues. But could you walk us through exactly what are the remediations if you have a child who is disruptive or a child who's bullying? Because it's not as easy as, and I don't think you have the power to remove them from the school or even the classroom. And I think that is a very difficult thing that the state has put into place. But I think most of us parents don't really understand that. Can you speak to that?
So yes, we are a public school, so you can't just remove students completely from the school system. Some of the things that we can do, easy one is a safety plan, but typically that happens for the person who feels like they were the victim. To Mrs. Spa's point, Mrs. Ennian's point, oftentimes there are instances that happen and they're unkind, obscene, or they can even be harassment, or it can be threat of violence. Things happen. There's incidents, but bullying has a very specific state regulation around it. So it may not be bullying sometimes, and that's why the definition is important. It has to be pervasive, so it's over a series of incidents that someone becomes a target. So let's, for example, if it's random and then there's multiple people and it's not necessarily one person, that wouldn't qualify as bullying, but it's an important incident that's taken care of. It's serious, and obviously we have a code of conduct. The state allows up to 10 suspensions for any individual, regardless. That's it, total. So once a student has been suspended up to 10 times, there is no, they cannot be, and that includes in-school suspension, not just out-of-school suspension. When you remove a child from their environment, you're already providing an alternate placement. So yes, both the victim and the aggressor have rights. So with the victim, oftentimes we try to, if we can, remove the situation and move pods, classes to alleviate. We make all teachers aware of the information. We provide the social workers, psychologists, if a lot of the parents give permission, to mediate among the young people who have the conversation of concern. We safety contract with the aggressors and with victims to see what help that they were looking for. Sometimes everyone wants it a little bit differently. At the middle school age, the parent would take the lead on that safety, but it would be for the person who feels like they want to be protected. Every parent has the right to advocate for their own child, but they cannot provide the administration to say, this is what I want to happen to student X. So it becomes, I mean, I'm a parent as well. It's very difficult when your child is feeling or having an incident happen to them. But it's all taken very seriously. But qualifying as bullying is just under the state regulation, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be taken seriously and then consequences provided. It may not, everyone doesn't know, I can't go into anyone's personal or all of the history of the background, but every incident is different. Every case is different. Every student and family incident is different. And I do think that I have full faith in our administration, and they're really thoughtful about how they handle. They use their deans, the teachers. As you know, in our ESTA plan, it's becoming more pervasive all along, being just kind, right? Mm-hmm. We're seeing that lack of kindness across the nation. So we have a lot of supports built in to increase our skill sets and advisory to be able to teach our students, how do we deal with difficult situations? How do we cope? How do we tell somebody I don't want you to do it without feeling like I can't advocate for myself, but also know when to get that trusted adult and intervene. That's why we're here. So as you notice, other than mathematics, the support is around our mental health and our SEL to really build that skill set, because we recognize that it's not a problem that's going to go away without us taking more care of it.
Just 1 second. Thank you. Yes.
I am floored at this, because when we had the situation of CRT and the anti-racism task force here to give their presentations, we heard so much from the public about how it is not necessary. We do not have bullying in our schools. We do not have intolerance. We don't have racism, okay? So, and I totally believe what you're telling us is your experiences. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to work closer with this wonderful task force that we've set up to figure out how we can build tolerance in our children. They're intolerant of each other for whatever reasons, whether it's COVID or just mimicking the parents in a lot of cases, I believe, hearing what they hear at home about people and different backgrounds. And I just feel like we need to address this more. We need to, and I would definitely, as you were speaking, I said, this is going on in the future agendas because we need to figure out a way of handling it in a diplomatic way, handling it with discipline, handling it within our curriculum, teaching kids that you don't, historically, they don't even want to teach our schools to teach the history of intolerance. These kids need this history facts so that it's not repeated more than ever now. Intolerance is not acceptable in this school district. And we've got to figure out among all of us how to deal with this. And I am sorry that you're going through this. I'm just boiled over with the idea of the immensity of this problem that we have. Anyway.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers. Mr. Day, and then I'll give you a chance to speak, Mr. Day.
I have a question for the administration. We've heard a couple of individuals that are very pointedly say that they were told that it wasn't bullying. Were these told by professionals? Was there just an incident report, if for nothing else, not even a bullying report, just an incident report? I met with so-and-so about a potential incident, and I believe that it wasn't bullying, so that there would be a paper trail to better. I mean, it's one thing if a teacher that has little or no training on bullying turns around and says to a kid, that's not bullying. I think I don't know. I'm asking you, does a teacher automatically refer this to a professional, or do they just take it upon themselves to turn around and say it's not bullying?
It typically referred to the dean of the administration. The teachers typically refer directly.
To a professional that knows and understands the law as it pertains to bullying, and would be able to at least make an incident report.
Correct.
That would had a discussion with.
And it can be coded. It just may not be coded under the. There's reporting, like we report all discipline, but this report is separated out and required to be submitted to the school committee twice a year. So, for example, you would see incidents, threats of violence. I mean, there are other incidents that occur: fighting, mutual altercation, assault. They're all coded differently, but this is a specific report required by the state, separated out.
I'm not talking about that report. I'm talking about something that do we have in-house that's an incident that said I met with so-and-so and.
Yes, there's notes taken on any incident in any report.
Well, I would think that this would be a step forward and to reinforce what these two ladies said here, that they were told that there was not bullying. That there should be a report that they were told by somebody that wasn't bullying.
Are you looking for like a finalized letter of some kind? Yeah, we could look at. I can speak with Mr.
Well, that to me is the way I used to do business when I was in charge of some individuals with reports on any potential miss or wrongdoings.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Ma'am, you can please, if you have another comment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Day, because I was really basically following up on that. Because I did state our students are being told this is not bullying, so they're not filling out a report. So I feel like when a student comes forward and they're speaking to a dean, have them fill out a report, because otherwise how are you going to see that they are being targeted if they're never filling out a report because they're being told by somebody you are not being bullied. So I feel like maybe just when students come forward, whether it be the middle school or high school, just give them the form, have them fill it out, because you don't know the numbers unless they're filling out an incident report or a bullying report. And if it's not bullying, all that's doing is creating paperwork, I understand, and I'm sure in some cases unfounded, but it will show a pattern if someone is being targeted. And school shootings and stabbings, they don't just happen overnight. And we are creating, when we don't do anything, you never know what a child is going to turn into. So I feel like it's no one's fault here. It's just we can do better. Small things, like just by listening to our students and having them fill out a report, whether the dean thinks it's bullying or not, just let them fill out their report. It took them a lot to go there. So just listen to the students. Listen, it could be, maybe it's bullying, maybe it's an issue. No, you don't know. But it's like, let them fill out the report. And then our numbers will be seen. And then you can see if a student is really being targeted. And it'll be looked into.
I agree.
So
Yeah, I
thank
agree.
you.
I do. Mr. LaGore.
So I'm on the website and the form is on there, but if I understand how it's used here, you've got to download it, fill it out, and submit it to someone, which is probably the barrier that you're talking about. Someone, it seems like maybe isn't as receptive to receiving it.
Well, what I'm hearing is, because as a parent, honestly, I've taught my kids to handle their issues. So it's a lot when they come forward that they're having an issue because they look out for other kids that are being bullied. And, this incident with the student, she was looking out for him. She actually, I'm not going to say any further because obviously this is like, I don't know if it's televised or like people are listening to it. So I don't want to say anything more, but she was looking out for a student and then that student ended up acting out on her. So I feel like,
So what I'm
so
suggesting
as a
is-
parent, like I haven't been going on, but the student, they're taking it upon themselves and they're going to the administration and they're being told, you don't need to fill out a
Right.
report.
So what I'm wondering is there an opportunity to make this forms submittable online?
For the
so
students
that
to
the
just
student
submit,
can just
that's a great
boom,
idea.
Submit it, and they don't have to go to an adult. They don't have to go to a resource officer. They can just.
That's a great idea.
We also have the Say Something app, which is anonymous. So even if a student feels, and you can put your name or not put your name, but any student for any incident can use that middle school and high
But
school.
I like Gary's idea.
Yeah,
Make
make
So
it
every time you
fillable.
add a layer of, so I'm an educator too and a
Yeah.
parent. And there's always a power hierarchy that's easy to ignore and just say, oh, they're a good teacher or they're a good resource officer. They are, but the power hierarchy always exists. That's one reason they may not be comfortable doing this. So if you can, this shouldn't be hard to create. Just boom, it could be submitted electronically, an app on their phone. I mean, we can do everything on Power School. This shouldn't be hard to do.
Good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Ms.
was just going to
Chambers.
say, I will suggest this for a future agenda item for sure, but we need to be more proactive with this and creating the pathways for these kids to come forward. This is not acceptable that these children have to deal with this. We always had to deal with it. Even as old as I am, we had some unkindness is done, but this is pervasive and we need to get a handle on it and become more proactive with it.
Thank you. Mr. Luzon.
I just got to echo what Donna was saying, not just then, but before. The last 8 months, we've seen different sides of Charahoe. And
Yep.
This bothered me.
Mhm.
Thank you for telling us.
Thank you. Yeah. We might invite you back to some meetings when we get the opposition in those seats that are saying, don't talk about racism, don't deal with that. Or gender equity and all of that. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good conversation. Important one. Go on to letter B.
Item B is K-8 mathematics curriculum revision, and Susie Scanapico is here along with Dr. Camella to provide those updates.
Hello, for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Susie Scampi. I'm the STEM specialist for 5 through 12. I'm going to be reporting out the K-8 math curriculum because we did all kind of work together anyway. With Dr. Camello's help, we have brought together the end part of our curriculum. So if you would remember, I'll just kind of bring you through the timeline. Because of the legislation to bringing in new curriculum materials, we started the middle school off almost in a Head Start application because they already had the old version of the curriculum we had selected. So we got them the newest version as quickly as we could get it for them. And to do that effectively, and the elementary, I should say, we had to have the documents showing quarter one or trimester one on the books so that they could start it in September. And then from that point on in the fall, we took on the rest of the curriculum to finish it up for quarters 2, 3, and 4, or trimesters 2 and 3. And that is where we are now. So you already approved quarter 1 and trimester 1 of this exact curriculum. We did do some updates on those first pages. We made hyperlinks to all of it so that you don't have page numbers on the table of contents. And then a great suggestion from Mrs. Picard to bring the click here to return to the table of contents so that it was easy to get right back up. So if you guys were using this live, prior to this meeting, hopefully that was useful. I want to especially thank the entire 2 teams that were a part of this. So again, the spring of last year and this fall. So everyone really worked very well together. We had come up with a very nice template. Everyone was able to stick to it since we started from scratch and work with, again, the new curriculum materials to kind of like see the pacing and things like that. As we know, in all of our curriculum documents, we state our foundations and our beliefs. And this is one that I really feel, especially in math, we want to have meaningful learning opportunities. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means with the new curriculum and what that really signifies in this new process, including the new materials. So as you can see, we kept all the same introduction, the mission, the vision, the things that you've seen in all the curriculum documents that have come through. We know that we expect rigorous academic standards. We know that that also means that we have to have really great supports, and we do that here very well with Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions with RTI and others, and that this is a learning process, not just a one-time situation. The practices is where I was going to tell you a little bit more about. If you've been seeing Homework Come Home and the new curriculum, again, K-8 right now, you're going to start to see, I think, what we did in math compared to what we're seeing now in math is a very different thing. And I think the first 3 math practices really speak to that. And these math practices cover kindergarten through 12th grade, just so you know, like they are the same exact 8 ones that just follow through. And the first 3 specifically are different from what I think we did a lot of when we were in school, making sense of problems and persevering to solve them, the perseverance part. I think that's really important, and we're really working. That is a new part of the teaching. It's not just expecting kids to have the perseverance, but teaching them how to have perseverance. The reason abstractly and quantitatively, you will start to see way more algebra in the younger years. And it's not going to be the first time they see it as in 9th grade. They're getting a lot more of that abstract piece at the younger years. So you're going to start seeing more of that. And then the third one, which is the most visual when you walk into classrooms now, which is construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. So not only are they knowing how to get to their correct answer, but they can tell you which strategy they use. They will use words like strategy, my approach, and they can dialogue around this, which is really interesting. And they can disagree with one another. Maybe that's where we're teaching dialogue and disagreement, but we are teaching them how to respectfully disagree with another person's answer or how they got to their answer. So, and that takes a lot of learning because it's not just the math. It's teaching all of those other things as well. But the others are, things that we would have always had in math, attending to precision, things like that. That's still there. But those first 3, I felt like really spoke to the new parts of what we're going to start to see in a lot of the curriculum. The hallmarks of excellence, of course, we are always going to try to do our very best and teach our students the very best. And I do think that the curriculum and the new materials are going to really heighten everything that we work with here. The goals, we are always going to envision that we have a vision of a graduate, right? But the graduate can't start at high school. The graduate starts at kindergarten. And so we want to make sure that we are creating that vertical articulation so that when they get to the high school, we're not playing catch up. Again, now going back to the documents themselves, you have kindergarten through 8th. The references are always to the RIDE and the Common Core State Standards. We have it just set up, I think, as neatly as we could so that it was for all the stakeholders to really understand what we're doing. We have the number of days of instruction, which will not necessarily always match. So it's number of instructional days. That doesn't include quizzes, tests, and all the other things that would also be involved. Math in action, just so if anyone had a question about that, is mainly like a project or a thing at the end that really brings all the different lessons from that unit together and makes it a little bit more realistic. Then we have the essential contents and skills, which are the major themes, the content to be learned, and the essential questions for that unit. I just had picked the 6th grade example here. And then if you went per lesson, you would see which focus standard was being specifically outlined. And then if you clicked on any of these blue links, the next thing you would have seen was the vertical articulation. So even as a teacher or a parent, you could say, what would they have learned last year? Again, especially these days when maybe they didn't learn it so strongly last year. This is what they would have learned last year, and that's why they may be struggling. And what will they be using this for in the future? So it's really going to bring you the behind and forward look of what that standard expects. So I think this is also helpful at the RTI level. We're seeing that, the students going in needing a little extra help for the gap fill section. We will be using this to see what they will be needing prior to that lesson. That was a really short summary because I just felt like you guys had a very long discussion, but if there's anything you have questions about, I'd be happy to answer them. I know you guys have looked through these documents very closely. And just that last piece of that timeline is the high school's being worked on right now for Q1 only by June, so that we can start Q1 in September, and then the finality of that curriculum will be worked on in the fall, kind of the same timeline we did for this.
Good. Dr. Callahan, you have a question?
Yeah, no, I don't have a question. It was so thorough.
Yes.
Just a general comment. I really enjoyed looking through this. I found it very challenging. I thought it was initially I thought it was very aggressive because you're right, algebraic expressions are pulled in much younger. I like that statistics and probability is introduced. That's something we have not been covering well as a country. And so to have it introduced at an earlier age, I think that's just outstanding. I think the team did a great job. I just wanted to publicly commend you on that. So thank you.
So just about the stats and the probability, because I think it's every math teacher's joke in a sense. It's always chapter 12 or 11 in
Yes,
every
you never get
textbook,
to it.
and you never get to it.
Right.
So it's really important. Somebody actually asked about the instructional days and how we plan on fitting it. So we're building calendars with the hopes that it's an ideal calendar, but that we're not going to cut at the end, but instead weed out the parts that are not less important standards, but that are not as foundational to the next year's learning. So you can, just comb out some of those smaller standards, continue with the focus standards, but not skip chapter 12. And like that was always something. And it was always, the last one was province stats. Like, I don't know why. Maybe they thought it was fun to roll dice and do stuff in June, but it never got there.
And I think it also supports the high school with introducing statistics as a 12th grade option. So it's that vertical line that missing.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And I do think that the books are more rigorous. I mean, the new curriculum we purchased is new and more rigorous. And what I think I would say publicly for parents and community members to know is that's going to take some time for the teachers to really take a shift to, but also for our students. So we have to be, and I almost have to take my own medicine on this one. We have to be gracious with our students that they may not get straight A's all the time right away, because this is really hard stuff and they are having gaps and they are going to have, and not to say they won't get straight A's, but if there's a bump in the road, that as parents, we say, what didn't you understand instead of what didn't you study? I think those are two different things. What didn't you understand? Let's relearn that. Let's see how you can, especially in math, so that we don't lose it for the next chapter, but not necessarily it only being about the grade, because I think that that's where, it's going to get a little messy for a little while as this is all coming up stronger.
Ms. Giusti?
Yes, it is very difficult. And so my seventh grader started in algebra this year, and it was something, you know, and there was a lot of struggle. There were some tears, but she persevered through it. So I think it's certainly challenging, but I think we've kind of lagged behind in mathematics in this country. And so I think it's important for our kids now to understand that no, it's important stuff. So I appreciate all the work that you've done on it. But yes, I want to echo your sentiments that I think a lot of kids are used to, I'm really good at math, right? And so then they get this mindset, I don't have an A anymore, so I must not be good at math anymore. It's just completely different and markedly different from what I learned. So
And another piece
Something.
that I'll add to that is there's a ton of reading comprehension
yes.
that's involved in it.
Yes.
It's no longer numeracy for numeracy's sake.
Mhm.
So if you were good at math, I
Mhm.
would put myself in that category, but I was not very good at reading comprehension. I would have struggled a little bit more in this
Mhm.
curriculum than I would have in our traditional one. So I think I task my teachers, which is a good role I sit in that let's identify where the errors are coming from. Is the error coming from lack of reading comprehension skills or numeracy skills? And let's try to really identify which one is lacking and
Yeah.
put the correct supports in, because that's really where we're going to see the difference. Because I also say, like, if I read it out loud to them, do they get the right answer? If they read it to themselves, do they get the right answer? Things like that.
Thank you.
But there are strategies being placed on that. There's 3 reads. You'll ask your students about 3 reads being read out loud to, they read along with, they read themselves, or I forget the order of them, but they read themselves. Something like that. Whole classroom, there's 3 reads. Just check it out. It's definitely part of their system.
Thank you.
There's somebody who's very good at math, I have a son going to college. He skipped algebra, went to pick up. What do you do with those students?
We do have students who test out at the high school level. So we have students right now that might test out of geometry during the summer so that they could go from algebra to algebra 2 because they weren't pre-selected back in 6th grade for accelerated. So the only reason to test out is to get to calculus. It's not ever intention to skip out to get less math, but the intention to have more math. But we do allow for that.
Ms. Spears?
Yeah, I think any kind of framing that we can do that steers our students away from dichotomous kind of understandings of their learning styles is really comprehensive, integrated, and serves our community better. And I feel like this particular approach is highly integrated. It is one that is useful for all of our learners, and I just want to applaud all of the work that you and your team have done, and kind of the rollout and the progression makes sense for our educators as well. And I think the grace that we need to extend to our students, we also need to extend to our educators who are learning in a system and working in a system in a different way, in multiple ways, but also in this one in particular. So I applaud the group.
And I do think that we had really great support. The state provided PD. We had PD implemented as part of our program that we purchased. They've been well supported, and I believe a second year of support is also going to be in place. And so I think that would be what I would say is much better than Common Core round 1, in the sense that I think there's a lot more like daily support that's being offered. And I think that's really good. Still going to have struggles and obstacles, but I do think it's going to go much better.
Yes, Ms. Chambers.
Thank you, Susie. Again, excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
And to your
Chambers.
team. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Newey. Excellent job.
Thank you.
As always.
Great.
Ms.
And the whole team.
And the whole team. Whole team.
A lot of work went into that. Item C, 2023 school committee meeting schedule. I recommend approval of the 2023 school committee meeting schedule.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve God, it's terrible to say, 2023 school committee meeting schedule. Open it up for questions or discussions. Anybody have any changes, suggestions? I kind of looked through it. It seems pretty standard. Okay, I'll take it to a vote. Those approving? Any opposition? Recusals or abstentions? That was unanimous. Thank you so much. Consent agenda items. Do we need anything pulled? Yes, Dr. Callahan.
Chair, I'd like to pull A1 and A2.
Okay, A1 and A2 is being pulled. Mr. Day?
I'd like to pull a B transfers.
The transfers?
Yep.
Okay, sir, thank you. Any other pulls?
Seeing there's none, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to move the remainder, but before I do,
Yes,
I
sir.
would like to acknowledge the donations. One, a donation from Marjorie Orby of Richmond, Rhode Island, of a new prom dress valued at $70 to a junior or senior in need. Two, a donation from Rudy Hemp and the foundation You Are Master Gardeners of a shade cloth for the Richmond Garden valued at $419.33 to the Richmond School. And three, a donation from Daniel Fowler of Wesley, Rhode Island, of a John Deere LA 125 riding mower valued at $900 to the Charo High School baseball program to maintain their field.
Nice donation.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the remaining consent agenda items. Those in favor? And that was unanimous also. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the executive session minutes of March 8th, 2022, approval of the executive session minutes of February 8th, 2022, minutes not sealed.
Second.
There's been a motion by Ms. Luzon, a second by Ms. Giusti to approve the executive session minutes of March 8th, 2022, approval of executive session minutes of February 8th, 2022, minutes not sealed. Any discussion or changes, amendments, or additions to those minutes at this time? I don't see any. I'll take it to a vote. Those in favor? Any opposition? Abstention, recusal. Abstention. Thank you, Mr.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to approve two regular session minutes of March 8th, 2022.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second, a motion by Ms. Luzon, and second by Ms. Giusti to approve the regular session minutes of March 8th, 2022. Any discussion or changes, amendments to those minutes? No? Those in favor? Any opposition? Abstention? Thank you, Dr. Young.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the transfers.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the transfers. Now I can open that up to discussion. Mr. Day?
I don't need to. I want to abstain from the vote on that.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir. Okay. Does anyone else have any discussions on that? No? Take that to a vote. Those in favor? Those against? Abstaining, Mr. Day, and any recusals? Thank you, Mr. Day. Okay, now we're on to reports.
So we have no subcommittee reports. I'm going to set, we have kindergarten registration that opened on March 14th. That is a digital centralized registration. Paper copies are always available to anyone who needs one. We message our K registration via our family emails, our towns, shared flyers, social media as well. Up to date, we have 28 K registrations, 4 at Ashaway, 5 at Charlestown, 7 at Hope Valley, and 12 at Richmond. We also wanted to give an update on the peer-to-peer mentoring as part of our mental health and supports for next year. We had a presentation at the Health and Wellness Subcommittee on March 8th and discussed the program as it's designed to build support through the school so that students know where and how to get help. The purpose is to reduce the stigma about dealing with mental health and asking for help. The peer-to-peer program also has resources to help schools build programs, including how to create their school team. Some schools will create an application process and staff recommendations to be able to get training over the summer and moving into the fall. One of the core principles of the program is that young adults will listen to one another. Mark Collins, who is the founder of the Chris Collins Foundation, said that the peer-to-peer website includes resources from other schools to help schools plan their programs. Feedback from the schools who have implemented this program on training sessions is very, very well received. There are several South County schools already implementing the program, and we had Narragansett and South Kingstown students share their experiences that they've had as they've implemented. So we're very excited to begin working on this as we enhance our ability to create a less stigma around mental health and more support for our students. We also have upcoming events. Hope Valley School Spirit Week, March 21st to March 25th. So that is happening right now. Early release day is tomorrow, March 23rd. Secondary is dismissed at 12:45 p.m. and elementary at 1:55 p.m. We have our National Honor Society ceremony at the CMS Auditorium at 6 p.m. on March 24th. On March 30th, we have our Terre Haute High School benefit concert, chorus of Westerly at Westerly Hall at 7:00 p.m. On April 4th, Hope Valley School PTO meeting at 6:30 p.m. On April 5th, our all-day budget referendum at the town halls, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. On April 6th and April 7th, we will begin third grade English Language Arts RICAS testing, which is the state testing. And on April 8th, secondary end of grading period, quarter 3.
Just going by. At this time, I'd like to offer the time for any school committee member to request future agenda items or legal opinions. Donna?
Yeah.
You had said you were going
Oh,
to.
I would very much like to carry on the discussion on, and I don't necessarily think it needs to be limited to the word bullying. It's the lack of tolerance in our children, and how can we become more proactive and engage the administration in that as well. Possibly, I don't know, Gina, the peer-to-peer mentoring might be one avenue. It sounds like it's possible, but let's just explore different ways that we can do to get a better handle on the lack of tolerance of the kids in the school. Call it discrimination, call it bullying, call it whatever. Does that make any sense?
It does. My
yeah.
thinking is, as you know, part of the work for the ESSER is on our specialists, our student service specialists, which is thinking about that whole needs assessment of all the needs based on what our students' needs are, what our teachers are saying the needs are, what they're seeing in class, outside of class, the incidents.
Right.
So I think it's our larger plan. That's what we want to sort of talk through the beginning stages of that work that we plan on doing moving forward.
And that's a good idea to talk at the beginning, because this is going to be an ongoing challenge.
Correct.
So definitely, if we could begin the conversation on our agenda.
We're also
you know,
looking
put
at
it
how
on.
we structure advisory to make sure that those skills are built in within that.
That, and also I'm a little surprised that the law is limiting you and what you can do to keep management in the classroom and keep these kids from threatening other kids. So I would like to hear a little more about that too. I don't know if you want to bring John in for that, but
We have to.
I'm so old that we used to just have kids suspended and kicked out of school, and that was the end of it. You get rid of the bad apples.
Can't do that anymore.
It doesn't sound like you can do that now. No. So anyway, so just to begin the framework in the conversation.
Yeah, yeah. April, at this point, just to let you guys know, April's pretty full. We have only one meeting in April, and we have. a lot.
Yeah, I just think that it needs to be
But there are things, I
addressed.
think, on April that we'll talk to this work around
Right.
student surveys that are coming up and the work that students are already saying that they have with their mental health.
But we all agree it's important, so we're going to get it on as soon as we
Right,
can.
right.
So,
And begin the conversation
Yes,
of how we can
absolutely.
be proactive in this, and bring in the anti-racism task force and see what they can do to help this situation in terms of they're working on the curriculum also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Day?
My understanding is we will have this in discussion in May then?
On the,
Well, we have 2 meetings in May, so yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean,
Yes,
we don't
it's
have a
important.
lot, we don't have a lot left of the school year. And I know that parents want to be involved. Once summer comes here, a lot of times things get, moved to their agendas and not in tune with ours. So
Mr. Day, we will make it a priority. Thank you. Anybody else?
Ready?
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
make a motion to adjourn.
There's been a motion by Mr. Luzon,
Second.
second by Dr. Callahan to adjourn the meeting. Those in favor? And that was unanimous. Thank you very much.
I like, we don't even have discussion. We just go straight to voting.
Well, what's it discussed? Who wants, you
wanna
don't want to
discuss
adjourn?
it?
I'm sorry. I'll open for
I always say that.
discussion.